Welcome to another episode of the Pint and Click podcast. I'm Tony. I'll be your host today. I'm joined here by Charlie.
Hello.
Fernando.
Welcome.
Who's also new. And Steven.
Hey.
We're all staff at the Des Plaines Library, so thank you for listening. Today, our topic is going to be horror films. And right in time for Halloween. So we're happy to share with you. We're all different levels of fandom of horror movies in their different respective subgenres. So what we're going to do first is we're going to introduce each of us and why we're a fan of horror, and then move on to three specific movies. We'll talk about Hausu, a Japanese film, The Boy, which is a modern horror film, and another in a similar school, The Witch, which also came out, I think, this year. So two modern films and a classic, I suppose. Let's start with Charlie. I'll kick this off with a question. What's your relationship to horror movies? How do you see that?
Well, I like movies. I like being challenged by movies, and that's sort of a weird place to come from as a horror fan, because horror kind of circumvents your smarts, your intellectual side. Like, if you're scared, it's not because you're thinking about being scared. But there's so much kind of mundane and formulaic horror out there that it's kind of hard to find the movie that you like. Like, just as a general rule, I'm going to stay away from anything that has even one sequel, because that just seems like a tacit admission that this movie is formulaic. In a couple of years, there's going to be another one that exists only to make money.
Yeah, it's just a money train.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The plots are retooled maybe a little bit, but I like movies by extremely visual directors, and I like weird stuff. I like extremely weird movies where you're like, I don't know what I'm watching, but I can't look away from it.
Awesome.
So I guess that's my relationship.
Yeah, and I'm also
a skeptic.
As a skeptic, I'm also a fan of like the visually stimulating movies. So like Guillermo del Toro, I'm sure you've seen those ones. Awesome. So we want to move to Fernando and
Sure. Basically, with horror, I don't know. I guess won't really give a very intelligent answer like Charlie, but basically, I like just the blood and gore aspect of horror, just basically to put it bluntly, and just kind of escape reality for a little bit, even if it's just kind of, screaming and blood and all that. But yeah, I've always been attracted to horror ever since I was a kid. I think I remember being 7 or 6, even dressing up as a vampire. And I don't know any kids that are 6 or 7 that are kind of fascinated by vampires. But I've always been a big fan of vampire culture as well. And I like watching people get scared. I don't know, I just kind of get a thrill of kind of being scared. And I'm a big haunted house guy. If you're a big haunted house person, you'll probably catch me around one of these haunted houses this October season. So, but yeah, just the blood and gore aspect of horror is what kind of attracts me to the genre.
Cool. And Steven?
I guess I'm a mix of Charlie and Fernando because I like two things equally. One is really over-the-top, gory, like Herschel Gordon Lewis, Rob Zombie, Japanese and Korean horror stuff that are just crazy, crazy over the top. And on the other hand, I really like art house horror movies. Lars von Trier's Antichrist, which is a married couple in an isolated cabin in the woods, and they both possibly are going quite mad and could do horrible things to each other. You aren't quite sure. The Shining is kind of like that too. It's really visual. It has its own pace. It's just like something inexorable is going to happen and you can't quite stop it. And if it involves family members especially, I find that really, really scary and creepy.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you mentioned the whole involving family members, because I feel like I'm kind of part of the same. The Antichrist sounds really good, but I know I would be freaked out by it. It wouldn't shy me away from seeing it, because often you get things from movies like that. So like The Witch we'll be talking about later is about family drama, family relationships. I personally, I guess I am a fan of almost the action and blood and gore of it, but at the same time, I know that that's for such a specific audience. So it's like I'd have to watch those alone almost to a certain extent, instead of watching them with my wife. So I don't end up watching as much. I think some of my favorite and typical horrors are over the top, similar to like Cabin in the Woods and things like that. But I don't know that I really have a great repertoire of horror movies. So I'm the one here maybe that has the most questions for you guys in terms of figuring it out. I don't seek out the adrenaline rush, but afterwards, after the fact, of seeing movies like Ju-on, The Grudge, I think the original, it's Korean, correct? Yeah, the original version of that. I absolutely loved the experience, and I was just like kind of shaken up by it. Yeah. So I like what horror movies do to me, but I don't go and seek out their influence. Yeah. So another movie that did that to me was The Mothman Prophecies, which was extremely psychological. And,
very much so.
Yeah, and just had such understated themes of horror, and that, it seemed like it left an effect on its victims rather than it hurting them or killing them or something straight outright. So psychological horror, I think, is my favorite. Even though it might not have gotten great reviews, I also like this one called The Jacket I think it was with Adrian Brody. And yeah, so psychological horror is my favorite, and ones that have artistic bents are definitely ones I get the most out of, and they all scare me, so I don't actively seek them out necessarily. But if you got any good recommendations, I'm happy to hear from you guys. So,
jump scare movies can be a lot of fun, like slasher movies and things like that. Mm-hmm. But part of that enjoyment, I really don't get scared anymore by those. Mm-hmm. It's more just appreciating how the formula is going to be reworked and watching that play out. So I don't really get quite so scared anymore when something jumps out and it turns out to be a cat, like it almost always is, things like that.
There's a lot of movies where the first 15 minutes are just sort of whisper quiet, and then the first scary thing happens, and the rest of the movie is just very intense music and it's very loud, and you jump in your seat and your heart rate races, but afterwards you realize, wait, I wasn't scared, I was just kind of shocked by the dynamic range of the soundtrack.
Yeah.
They are kind of formulaic, but especially when you see them in the movie theater, they can be thrill rides.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I thought you said Trump scare initially when you started the other sentence. So I'm just thinking of Trump the whole time.
I can't wait to see all of the little kids dressed as Donald Trump this Halloween season.
For Halloween, yeah. That's bound to happen.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention, kind of elaborating what Charlie was saying. There's one movie I saw a couple years ago at the theater, and it was so predictable, and it was actually Scream 4. And I remember the people sitting next to me, they were already calling out the scenes, and lo and behold, that's what happened. Like, don't get in the car's not going to start, and don't go outside, he's out there. And I just wanted to tap the people and be like, hey, quiet, shush.
But the fact that these tropes are so entrenched and internalized by horror movie fans means that this different genre of like self-aware meta horror movies like Cabin in the Woods has started coming up, and I think that's a good place for it to go because it knows what you're expecting out of a horror movie and it deliberately twists it in such a way that keeps you on edge.
And it can make things a little more smart. I don't know if any of you guys saw, I don't know if it was this year or last year, It Follows.
No.
That's basically, it's a monster created as a sexually transmitted disease. So it really plays with the whole tropes about, especially in slasher movies, it's always the couple that are having sex that get killed first. So it's just about this thing that can kill you that's passed on from person to person that way. So it plays with cliches and tropes, but in a really clever, smart way. And it's also scary at the same time.
Yeah, I'm always interested to see like kind of the classical setting changed for horror. I saw one called Tale of Tales that at its surface wasn't a horror movie at all. It was a fantasy drama movie, and it tells the story of a king who has to slay a water dragon in order to have his wife bear a child. But then the child is actually, there's a child, actually magical child bore by two women, and they're twins. And so this, it's telling narratives kind of across this different fantasy land. And it evolves into such, there's like a womanizing king from one town who ends up being completely, not really seduced by, but tricked by some of these old kind of crone women that are in town. And what happens kind of in the story is it addresses themes of like insecurity and, wanting to be forever young and wanting to have a perfect body. And the way it shows some of these things are just in a completely terrifying way. And some of the images are stronger in a story told like that, where the horror is put almost at the crux of the resolution of some of these plots. It was like a surprising horror movie. Like you were being lured into it. I don't know that
one. I would definitely check that out.
Yeah,
that sounds right up my alley.
Yeah, and there's 3 plots that are all going on. So highly recommend that one.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, what's our thought, like the consensus on so bad they're good horror movies? Like things that are badly made, badly acted, not convincing as horror, but just sort of entertaining?
I'm 100% invested in that. I mean, I think some things, especially if there's a certain level of incompetence involved, it almost becomes kind of a meta experience in itself.
Where you like watch the credits and think, oh my God, all of these people had to have thought this was a good idea for this movie to have gotten made.
Exactly, yeah. There are a lot of choices, were involved in creating this product. But then there's some things, it's almost kind of an auteur experience. Like, I know, Charlie, you wanted to talk about Hausu, which is very difficult to describe and classify, but it's really over the top. Some people might watch that and feel like they're watching a bad movie. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't.
It does definitely straddle the line of bad on purpose and amateurish, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too strong of an opinion about maybe the production of it. I'm totally okay with watching something that seems really bad and that the practical effects are either over the top. I think that it lends itself a certain level of entertainment because, again, you're self-aware that it's being gory or being the monster is maybe not scary. It's something else that you're looking at on the screen and you're liking it. I don't know. So I'm happy that those types of movies are made because it really, I think if you're a creator of any kind, you'll get something out of it too, just consuming that type of media because it's challenging maybe what's already exists in the horror film.
Like the makers of the Sharknado films and other films that they make for the Sci-Fi Channel really play off of that. That, we know, it's kind of a wink, wink, we know we're making a bad movie, and that's what's so great about it.
Have you guys seen any of the Japanese horror movies?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw one about a year ago, and I think I kind of gave up on the genre. I feel like they just kind of threw a bunch of blood in there and just kind of automatically deemed it a horror movie. Like there wasn't really any substance to it. It's just like, let's just throw a bunch of chopped off limbs and blood and screaming and call that a horror movie. I don't know. There wasn't really a backstory to it, and I think it was this girl. She had a leg as a chainsaw or something like that, and she kind of went around town and started terrorizing people. And I was just like, all right, there's no substance, no story to it. So I ended up watching all of it, but I don't know. Just the Japanese horror genre is just extremely gory and gruesome.
Yeah, and Korean horror films as well has that same kind of quality. And I think a lot of them, those ones that came out in the 1990s and the 2000s in particular, have that really over the top. It's just gore. And possibly there's some cultural elements that we don't really quite get. Sometimes I feel like if I'm watching a Japanese or Korean horror movie, I'm like, I think there's maybe something else going on that I don't quite catch because I haven't grown up in that culture.
Right. Like if you compare the original Old Boy with the American remake, the American version seems almost tame in comparison.
Right.
I'm not sure if that's a cultural difference or just sort of it's been Hollywoodized.
Well, maybe we should move on to the Hausu discussion on the note that it's different. I haven't seen it. I don't know.
I have not seen it, no, unfortunately.
We do have it at the Des Plaines Public Library, thanks to Steven.
I recommended it, yeah.
So I guess, as you said, it's very hard to actually describe the plot because the plot is sort of secondary to the experience of the movie, but I'll give it a go. It's basically a schoolgirl named Gorgeous, like that's what she's referred to as, goes to stay at her elderly aunt's house, invites 6 of her school friends, and eventually the house starts eating them or doing bad things to them. And that's pretty much the whole plot. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, there's a kind of a weird subplot, if I remember correctly, with a stepmother.
I think that they mentioned at the very beginning that the reason she's spending her summer vacation at the aunt's house is because her father has remarried and she's trying to get away from that.
Right. So it's basically a haunted house movie, but it's a crazed haunted house. And the way it's filmed, a lot of the colors are really oversaturated. Some of the action is gory and comical, I think on purpose.
Right. I don't want to say it's not gory because there's dismembered body parts and rivers of blood, but it's not convincingly gory.
Yeah.
It's cartoony. There are literal cartoons in the action. There's kind of primitive green screening and matte effects. But I think that the one thing that makes the movie so different from any other horror movie is the soundtrack, which isn't that sort of psycho violins, choo 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 choo. Some of it sounds like kind of slapstick ragtime music that you'd hear in a Charlie Chaplin movie. There's pretty piano melodies. There's a couple of English language pop songs that sound like Wings or Supertramp, and it goes against every rule of what a horror movie soundtrack should be.
Yeah,
but it sort of puts you on edge that much more and makes the experience that much more off-putting.
It really defies all your expectations and possibly defies and confounds your senses at the same time as you watch it. I think the first time I saw it, my mouth was just open the whole time because I was just so confused and entranced by what I was watching. It's crazy. That's the way to sum it up. It's crazy.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
And I know we were talking about it maybe being a bad film, maybe not being, but the DVD that we have is a Criterion Collection, which, they don't put out trauma films.
Right.
Like they put out things very lovingly restored and with a wealth of bonus features. And one of the bonus features that I thought was really compelling was it pointed out this subtext of World War II. The director, whose name I'm going to butcher, Nobuhiko Obayashi, was born in Hiroshima during World War II. And when they're introducing the character of the aunt, they reveal that she had a husband who she lost in the bombing. And it sort of puts that subtext over the rest of the film, that this is these young girls are sort of growing up in the shadow of the bomb. Like, their world doesn't really make sense. And so pretty much everything you see in the film does not make sense. And isn't that just like reality or something like that?
Yeah.
Maybe that's reading too much into it. Maybe.
I don't think so. I mean, I do think it's a work of art in that respect. It's
there's
all
a lot
done
of
very
ways.
Purposefully, and there's a lot of layers to it, but it's still crazy at the same time.
Wow, I'm going to run over there and get it before Fernando does.
Yeah, I'll beat you there.
Yeah,
And it is in the foreign section, not the horror section.
right.
Okay.
It sounds interesting, just the whole musical, because, I went to school for music, and just music has a big impact on, movies, and just that alone just started me to want to watch it.
Yeah.
So I'll beat you there, Tony.
That's your floor. You can have it. Sorry, was there anything else about Hausu?
I guess just don't confuse it with House, which is a comedy horror movie that came out in the 80s, starring George Wendt. They're very different movies.
Good tip, Joe. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So the next thing on our list was we're going to talk about The Boy. Fernando had actually recommended this movie to me. I really enjoyed it. I just watched it. One of the big things about this movie is that I went into it also knowing that kind of there would be a beat shift somewhere in there. But the movie is about a nanny who goes to a house expecting to be watching over this kid. The kid's a doll. The parents skip town. She obviously treats the doll with the respect the doll deserves and puts a blanket over its head. But, there's this whole schedule the doll is supposed to have, and there's all this thing. They prepared her and made sure that the doll accepted her being there. So the entire time, of course, you're waiting as the camera sits on the doll that's not moving. You're waiting for something. You're waiting. And of course, because there is a little bit of a jump out action to it, she'll have a dream and the doll will do something, or a painting might reach out or something. It's great in the suspense aspect of that, and that it's keeping you glued to it. At least horror film amateurs like me are watching it and, oh my gosh, But then part of the way through the movie, you realize, I haven't seen this doll move once. I'm waiting for this thing to do something. This isn't Killer Chucky with the puppet hands. So it's great in that way because it rewards you waiting and waiting, suspending your disbelief for something to happen, and then nothing happens. And I think that's a great horror technique to keep the tension extremely high.
It started off kind of slow, and then there was all these cliche things that kept happening. Like, people were expecting the doll to move, so the nanny finds, plates at her door, in her room. And it's just, all this cliche stuff. But, yeah, like you were saying earlier, there was, a bend, a twist to it. And I don't want to spoil it. I don't know if I'm allowed to, but...
I don't know. I mean, it's probably best we don't, just so that viewers can enjoy it themselves and listeners can.
Yeah, it just turns out to be more like a thriller, the second half of the movie. It just threw me off. I was like, this is going to be a typical horror movie, haunted doll, this and that. And then from there, it's just excuse me, you're on the edge of your seat, like a roller coaster. It's just very intense.
Yeah. Yeah, and things do happen that lend themselves to you understanding that the doll has some kind of agency. Like, her shoes do go missing the first day. The parents mention that, the shoes, he's always bad to people he just meets or something. The kid, Brahms, is always bad. And, there'll be different things like dishes will be moved around or things will be moved. And the doll is definitely a presence even if it's not moving. So when the pressure culminates, it's a very good payoff. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just a solid recommendation. I mean, I'm really happy to have seen that. I don't know if it really stuck out in any other particular way. I think, I'll probably have more to say about The Witch, and just in that, aside from, a reveal, there are very few characters in this movie, and it just kind of directs itself in a more of a pretty formulaic, which is okay sometimes.
Yeah, and just the setting itself I think it was in England, just really creepy, and their mansion is just very atmospheric and just very, very creepy.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's modern, so she only has contact with a few people. So one of the subplots is that she's leaving an abusive relationship, and of course there's a tension of her getting a call from home from her sister and just being afraid for her sister, or being afraid for, a situation in her past. So, naturally it's maybe she's tormented on the inside, and you realize that there's also something else she has invested in the house, and that, she had a problem with. So there is good character development, I should say. It's not just a linear plot with a faceless hero.
Right.
So there's more to this movie than would just be an average horror movie, and that's, I think, what really had me glued to it. So. Yeah.
I haven't seen it. From the way you guys are describing it, it sounds like something I would enjoy. And the creepy doll and or creepy child scenario is always, I never get tired of that.
Awesome. Moving on to The Witch. This is about a family in 1630s New England. They are banished from their hometown because the father is extremely rote about his religion and extremely critical of the church that his hometown has. So
he's even too pious for the Puritans.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's a real extreme kind of guy.
And this film has amazing sets. It has amazing language. Banished, for example, is the way it's pronounced at the time. And they are able to also confer so much of the spirit of that Puritan education, because there will be scenes with the father and the son rehearsing, very strict laws and ideas of their philosophy, which really does create this atmosphere of understanding the philosophy of the time, or getting in the heads of these characters, which is hugely important because this is one of those psychological thrillers we were talking about. The family is like any pioneering family, and especially one that's isolated from the village, dealing with some very hard times. Their crop of corn is rotten. They don't have money to trade. All sorts of kind of infighting. So it's a family drama, and it also kind of involves the fact that and this is kind of the catalyst for the main storyline, is they actually lose their baby boy Sam to a witch, to a wolf. We don't know as viewers. All we know is that their young daughter was watching this child at the time of its disappearance. So that's kind of the main action that begins the movie. And there is some pretty intense gore and imagery in this film right off the bat. The child does not meet a happy end. It's best, I think, to say that as a viewer, you see witchcraft and witchery, but also that a lot of the conflict of this is an internal struggle that the family is going through. So it helps you keep that ambiguous in your mind, even though you see horrible things. So I don't know if you want to go into the details of it, or if any of that struck you. I know you saw it much earlier, Charlie, but you guys have to chime in.
I think that the ambiguity was a very central part of it, because it does mention in the credits that several lines in the script of the movie are taken verbatim from 17th century documents. And so that gives it an extra bit of, I guess, historical credibility. What I was waiting for, and I don't think I got a full payoff, but I was waiting for some sort of logical explanation. I was sort of reading it as a movie about this Puritan family is driving itself crazy with restrictions and sort of hallucinating this supernatural thing. And I was just waiting there's a logical explanation for all of this. And not to spoil it, but that doesn't really come. And I think that them leaving that ambiguous, it sort of makes the most shaken up that you are, not necessarily in the movie, but afterwards. Because I know that it was hard to get to sleep after seeing it.
Yeah, the attention to detail with the research, and also the filmmaker filmed it all in natural light. Mm-hmm. So it's sunlight or it's candlelight, and it really puts you into that place. Mm-hmm. And, that combined with the isolation of the family, the hardship, the interfamilial struggles that they're going through, and then the possible supernatural element, kind of all, to me, made a recipe for something really potent and strong. I don't think it's a perfect film, but I thought it's a pretty good film.
Mm-hmm. We mentioned soundtracks earlier in terms of like not fitting. I felt like the soundtrack to this film, coupled with its imagery, was very powerful. They were able to kind of really harness the images of goat horns, for example, crows or rabbits, simple things that exist in a forest or in a settler's life, that because of your psychological relationship to these things, like a black hare or a black rabbit, just seems so much more menacing because of the places you've seen it in the past, earlier in the film. The soundtrack just really channels that, and because it is a slower movie, it needs a very, I think, evocative soundtrack, and it really succeeds in that regard.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Is there any gore in this movie?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. Oh, okay.
It starts out with, I'm not going to describe it at all, but one of the most horrific images I've ever seen on film, I think. Extremely disturbing. And then you're into this family drama story. So it really kind of throws you off.
Wow.
But there's gore. The animals are very scary,
Yes.
even if they don't do anything. Something about the way it's shot. A lot of the animals seem very self-aware.
Yeah.
Somehow they have like a bigger, like you mentioned, the black hair. It almost has a bigger presence than just a rabbit.
Yeah.
Something about the way it's filmed.
And it's because it's witchcraft and it's witchcraft, there's one discussion about witchcraft that kind of triggers off and plants the seed of doubt in the family's head. And it's, of course, among the kids. I was afraid of this being a possession movie. Exorcist is always going to be like, has left its mark on the people that it's so. But it wasn't quite a possession movie. And though there was scenes that reminded me of that, it was kind of its own new horror in a way that really was almost... It kind of gives me chills thinking about it. It was a new kind of, abuse to one of the characters that psychologically scarred them. May have been a physical affliction, but it seemed like a psychological affliction or a physical affliction that turned into a psychological one. So very powerful. And again, because it's a slow movie, they could spend a really long time on the painful and hard parts without making it a movie about possession. So,
jeez.
Yeah. So it does really good. The things that it succeeds at, it does really well. So.
Yeah. I would agree. And this is kind of after the fact. I appreciate the movie a little bit more after the fact. Right now, because I've been reading, there's a nonfiction book that came out this year by Stacy Schiff called The Witches, Salem, 1692. That's about the Salem witch trials.
Okay.
And witchcraft was very pervasive in that culture in the Puritan. It seemed like a very reasonable explanation for anything that went wrong at all for those people. And also they all had really, really hard lives. So if something's going wrong with your crops or your livestock, it's really, really important and significant. And I thought the film kind of captured that too. It was just like, well, of course you would think it was a witch. And who's the witch? And
What else could it be?
what else could it be?
Well, that concludes our episode this time. Thank you for joining us at the Pint and Click podcast. Make sure you check a library stock for all these movies. I think all of us, I know The Boy and the Witch are in stock, and definitely just check the catalog, and we'll see you later.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.